So the purposes of this video, guys, really is to go over a general overview of why I think this game is going to be fantastic, and some of the problems they're looking to solve and how they're going to do that, and just generally how they've upgraded the game from the previous one. I'm not going to go into too much detail here on the full game changes of the mechanics and full detail of every single one. I am aiming to do some more content in the future, which will be more focused and more detailed on specific areas of the game, so you can look out for that. But for now, we're just going to go over a handful of things which will be interesting to those who have not necessarily gotten into Path of Exile before because of the barrier, or because they were confused, or they just didn't like certain mechanics, and why they're resolving some of these for the new game, and why it will be better for a more casual audience while still retaining some of the complexity that ARPG blasters like myself love, and why we play these games. So the first thing I want to mention, guys, really is the engine has been upgraded massively. It looks fantastic, and I can tell you now that I'm playing a bit of the original Path of Exile game right now, just to get my feel, my taste before Path of Exile 2's out, like I'm sure many of us are, and it still looks pretty good. It's been upgraded over the years, but it is dated compared to other games that have come out recently. So it's nice to see that we're going to get a new game that's going to look much more fresh. It's not necessarily going to be the best looking game on the market, but it's going to look much better. The visuals and the lighting will look great. The animations system looks a lot better, which is one thing that other games definitely did better up until now. And just generally speaking, the requirements for the game do not look insane either. So it should be reasonably accessible for the mass market overall, especially since it's going to run on console. So this is a really good starting point when you're making your game. Make it accessible, especially if you're looking to get into the more casual audience, which is definitely an audience that Path of Exile has struggled to retain or even interest in the past. Moving more onto like game design aspects here. One of the big things in the past about Path of Exile that was really, really, really tricky for people to get into, and I know people who are absolute nerds for action RPGs. They know Diablo 2 inside out. They've played it for 20 years. They know Diablo 4 inside out. They know Diablo 3 inside out. They've played Last Epoch, but they've struggled with Path of Exile because they just don't understand. They don't quite understand when they first start, like, how does currency work in this game? And I kind of understand this because you don't have conventional gold in as you would expect, or currency like you do in action RPGs. You get currencies that you can get through selling items that do various things in the game, such as open portals, identify items, reroll stats and sockets, and whatever else they can do. And these have varying values. And when you're a new player, you have no idea about any of this. And short of reading an encyclopedia of guides, or going to someone like myself or any of the other fantastic content creators out there in this genre, you're going to struggle to just know how to do these things. And that is going to put off an enormous audience straight away, because there's a lot of people out there whose time is very, very valuable. They don't have a lot of time to play games, so when they play, they want to have a good time. And if they're sitting there for hours and hours and hours just trying to figure out how on earth to play the game, they're probably not having the best time. And Grinding Gears has obviously recognized this. So with Path of Exile 2, they are bringing conventional gold in, and I don't know the full extent of what gold is going to be used in the game, but what I do know and what we've been shown is it's going to be used for things character related, so re-rolling passive nodes. Path of Exile, you had to get a currency to give you extra passive node re-rolls, and you only got very limited of them. So they're solving two problems here. They're allowing you to re-roll stuff more often, but they're also making it so it's using a currency that's much more universally understandable to people. So that's going to be great for a more casual audience without damaging what us pro action RPG blasters can understand and like about the depth of the game. Beyond this, there's still going to be the currencies that do specific things in the games. Now, I don't know, again, the full extent of all of them in the game, but it definitely looks like there's going to be your equivalents to what we had in Path of Exile for re-rolling stats, re-rolling sockets, all of these other things, currencies to craft gems with, and so on. So there's still going to be the depth there, but they're just trying to bring it in line, so it's a bit more, the entry level to playing this game is going to be a bit less. And this is just fantastic for the game, and it should open up the doors to the game a little bit to some of those slightly less enthusiastic action RPG players. Another thing they're doing, which honestly is going to help a lot as well, is they're simplifying flasks. So for anyone that's new to Path of Exile, flasks are the equivalent to potions. And in Path of Exile, your flasks refill as you kill things. And in the first game, you could have 5 slots with 5 different potions. You could have healing potions, mana potions. You could also have potions which, when used, would give you a bonus. So extra movement speed, extra resistances, or any other mana, extra damage. There's so many out there, you'd have to play the game to sort of learn them all. And that's kind of one of the problems. It creates 2 issues. One, you've got to find these items and learn what they all do. So you're actually... You still don't know how to build your characters here. But secondly, and more importantly, it creates an issue where you're basically playing the piano. You're smashing your keyboard keys on your flasks, trying to time them in combat on top of everything else you're trying to do to maximize and optimize how you're playing your character. And for a lot of people, this is actually a very, very big issue, because it creates a bit of a clunky play style, whilst really what you're trying to do is use your potions when you're healing. You might end up going through you might go through all your potions, and then you realise, actually, I don't have anything to heal with now because I've used them for other reasons. Now, that could be seen as a skill issue, but it is confusing to a casual audience. So what they've done here is they've got 2 potion slots, and one's going to be healing, one's going to be mana. They're not going to have the beneficial aspects to them, so you are going to use them for the purposes that they are intended. And what they've done with the beneficial benefits you would have got from the potions otherwise is they're adding an item and inventory slots for things called charms. Now, Diablo 2 enthusiasts and Last Epoch enthusiasts will know that you've got the equivalent of charms or idols, and you put those in inventory and they give you bonuses. It's going to be sort of the same in Path of Exile 2. They're going to give you bonuses, and they're going to give you immunity to frozen and whatnot. They may have to be activated, they may be passive. We'll wait until we play the game to find out for sure, but they are going to basically replace those benefits you're going to get. It looks to me like they're going to be passive. So this will, again, simplify the game a bit, because it's another item to chase for, but it means when you've got it equipped, it's much more obvious what you've got going on, and you can then use your potions for what they're intended for without having to smash your keyboard keys as much as well. So that's just going to be good for an entry level for your entry audience. Another system which will have absolutely put other people off in the past is just gems and skills in general. So in Path of Exile, your skills aren't linked directly to a class. You choose a class, and all that really does is it changes where you start in a passive tree. A massive, massive passive tree, but it changes where you start. And depending on where you start, depends on what nodes you've got access to early on. And those nodes are influenced by which class you're in. So if you go for an intelligence-based class, you're probably going to have more intelligence-based stuff nearby. But not necessarily everything will be, but that's a general ethos here. Your gems and your skills are equipped in Path of Exile through sockets on your gear, and those are coloured red, green or blue or white if you're lucky enough to get that, and that will allow you to equip any colour in there. And they have links and such and such. You've got active skills, ones you use, and you've got support gems which modify or manipulate the skill gems that they're associated with. So this system, just by explaining there, for some people will be very confusing if they've not played the game before, and it creates a phenomenal amount of build options, which is great for people like me who like to theorycraft, great for people who like to play these games a lot and play with loads of different builds, but not so great for people who want to pick up a game and go, I've got this skill, I really like how this skill works, how do I make this skill better, and just blast the game. I want to enjoy the game. It makes that game very difficult to play in that way. So they're doing a few things here to improve this, particularly for the entry level of audience. Firstly, you've still got a phenomenal amount of skills, and you're still going to have skill gems. But the first thing that's going to be done is they're going to be taken out of gear. You're no longer going to equip these in gear anymore. They're going to go into essentially a book or an inventory, as say, and you're going to have a certain amount of slots where your skill gems will go in, and you'll have a certain amount of associated support gems to go with them. Now, I think you start off with 2 of those slots active at any time, and then later on you get a resource that you get which will allow you to unlock more support slots as you go, and you can flesh your skills out as you get the slots. So this is great because it takes out the requirement to keep a piece of gear because it's got the right number of sockets and the right color of sockets, and you have no idea how to get more. You don't know anything about the crafting system or how you can re-roll sockets or the amount of sockets and colors of sockets and links and all this stuff. All that complexity has been taken out and put into a book. So for us old Path of Exile players and stuff, that's a little bit less complexity. So that might be a bit off-putting. But for the more casual audience coming into the game, this will be a lot easier to understand. You've got a book, you stick your skill gem in, you put some associated support gems in, and off you go. You put them on your hotbar and you'll have a great time. And it will make it a lot easier to manage them. And it won't mean you pick up an item that you want to use, but you can't because you haven't got the right sockets and so on and so on. So you're going to be able to change your gear out a bit more. You're going to be able to interact with the other systems they're bringing in with Path of Exile 2, like crafting and all these things, which will just be great. This will be much, much more accessible to the general audience. And it will create a way to play differently to Path of Exile, which will be fresh as well. On the subjects of gems and skills, they're changing how we interact with crafting them and just obtaining them. So it looks like instead of picking up just gems that are this is shield smash or whatever the skill is, incinerate, it doesn't really matter. You pick it up, it's got a colour, and that's what it is in Path of Exile, and then you stick it in your inventory. In Path of Exile 2, it looks like you pick up a currency, uncut gems, and you use those uncut gems to craft the gems that you want, the skills you want. You've got a massive book, loads of skills, all sectioned out with class. This is monk skill, this is a skill associated with shields, and so on. You've got a nice little search book there that you can find skills. And you go, oh, I quite fancy that skill, or that support gem skill, and you go and craft that one. Now, we may need to unlock these as we play through the game. You might not have access to them all from the very get-go. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know yet. When we play the game, we'll find out. But the idea is, as you go, you're going to be able to craft the skills that you've got in your book. And it means that solves a few problems. One, inventory management. You're not going to have clutter. You can just store this currency, and then when you want the new gem, you go craft it. And then when you're done with it, I'm assuming you'll be able to dismantle it and get the currency back again, or at least some of the currency. That's great. You're solving more than one problem, and you're making it easier. So when you're picking stuff up, you're not worried. You're not sitting there going, "Oh, I'm not going to pick that up because I don't want it, and it's just going to clutter my inventory." As anyone knows in this genre, most of these games suffer from terrible inventory management, particularly Diablo 4 right now. So I'm all for things that make this better. But generally speaking, it creates a crafting system to work with as well, which is interesting. And it may well be that they'll play into that more down the line, giving more interesting crafting potential to those as well. We'll see. Another thing they're doing, which I think is very, very smart, and it will very much benefit those who, frankly, just want to pick up the game, play a skill they're really enjoying, and blast with it, and not sit there trying out a gazillion different support gems and other things to make it work, or even go off and find a guide and rely on someone else to make a guide for them, which works well, creating just one path that they can use to play a skill, and that's how it's done. It looks like in the game they're going to have a recommended build section, which is very, very intelligent. They've got this book with all these skills and searchable and such, so why not have it so when you click a skill it goes, oh, you've got this skill on, no problem. These are recommended to use with it. Now those might not be the best ones to use overall. There might be some clever clogs out there that picks up a skill and works out some absurd build that you would never think of that actually worked much better. But these gems that are recommended by the game will work with this build, and they will work nicely, and it will give you a full layout of those. And for people who are just picking up the game and want to play, say, Incinerate and go off and blast with that, they'll be given a set of gems that you can play with, support gems and such, and a build that will just work. Go off and have a great time. And if you've got that across all your classes, all your weapons, all your skills, it's going to create loads of builds for people to play with without having to put too much thought and energy into it. And for a game that's got an absurd passive tree that's very, very large, with an enormous amount of gems and skills that are going to create infinite possibilities, basically, to how you build characters, this creates it brings it back down to earth a little bit for those who don't either want to put the brain capacity in, don't necessarily have the brain capacity to be able to sit there and work out all of these little bits, or all the time to do it. They can just sit down, have a good time with the game, and off they go. So this is a very smart move by Grinding Gears. Another way of them trying to solve that problem at Path of Exile is trying to open the doors to a different audience, which has definitely not been able to get into the original game. So another thing I think that they're doing, which is quite subtle, but it's actually really smart, is the classes in general. So what we know is there's going to be 12 classes in the final game, and there's going to be 8 in the early access, but there's only going to start off with 6 when we get it on December the 6th. We've heard of 8. We're guessing 6 on December the 6th, and there's going to be 12 overall. We haven't heard of the other 4 yet. And each one of those classes is going to have 3 ascendancies, and on the early access on December the 6th, of the 6 classes we are getting, we are going to get 2 ascendancies only. So we're going to basically have 6 classes, 2 variants of those classes, and that's so you're going to have 12 variants overall, and those will play off in the way they do, and you can build your builds out. So that's great. That's pretty similar to what Path of Exile had in terms of how many, sort of the level of classes and the ascendancies and all that. So that's going to be familiar to your original audience. The thing they've done, which I think is quite smart here, is they've changed the names of the classes to be much more understandable without having to really explain what they are. So for example, in the original game you had Witch, you had Shadow, you had Marauder and such, and they wouldn't necessarily just be instantly recognizable by your audience. In the new game, in Path of Exile 2, you've got Sorceress, you've got Monk, you've got Huntress, you've got Mercenary, you've got Warrior, and you've got Druid. They're the 6 we're getting. Mercenary is the only one in those 6 which, if you heard of an action RPG, you wouldn't just necessarily instantly understand what that's going to be. That is a new thing for them in this game, and they've said. So that's cool. They're giving us something new as well. Crossbows and guns sort of style gameplay. That's not something we've seen before. But Sorceress, you're instantly going to think, cool, that's going to be your caster. Fire, cold, lightning, monk. You're going to go around and punch people in the face, and you're going to give them a good old slap, and you're probably going to use staffs, and you're going to go around and be a martial arts wizard. Huntress, you're probably going to use a bow, and you're going to go around shooting stuff. Warrior, you're just going to go around and be a massive knight, and you're going to smash people over the head with your shield and sword. Druid, you're probably going to turn into wolves, bears, any other manner of things. They're quite recognisable in this genre and space. So they're using names for classes which will be instantly more recognisable to a more casual audience, which I think is very smart. And like I say, it's quite a subtle change. But overall, this should make the class system a little bit easier for people to just boot up the game and go. Another area of the game that's going to have been very off-putting to people in the past is the passive tree. In Path of Exile 2, your passive tree is massive. It's got stupid numbers of nodes in it, and to some people, they're going to look at it and go, holy moly, where on earth do I start? How do I do this? And they're going to start playing the game. They're not really going to be sure where they're putting the points, and they're going to get put off because they're not feeling powerful and mighty, and they're just going to... They couldn't respec their points because they didn't have enough. They didn't have any way of easily respecing. You needed a resource for this. They didn't know how to get the resource, and then they just go, do you know what, screw this, and then they uninstall the game. I couldn't tell you how many people in the past have told me, like, how do I do the passage tree? How do I respec? And all these things. And you basically say, you've got to get this currency. You've got to learn the game. And that is not good for a casual audience. So there's a few things here they're doing with passive tree, which I think will improve it much for the new audience. The passive tree is still massive, but one thing they've done is they've rejigged it so that if you choose a class, all the nodes around that class are going to be much more encouraging to that class. They're going to be stronger for that class in general. Probably not all of them still, but it means if you go off on a path that isn't necessarily the most optimal, you're probably still going to have a good time. And you're not just going to sit there and think, oh, I've made a mistake, I'm not feeling any power, I can't unspec it, I'm screwed. And that's something that's definitely put off people in the past, and I know this for a fact because of people coming to me. So there's just less penalty to not necessarily knowing what you're doing, which is going to be a significant portion of the audience when they're playing. So it should just be a lot easier to play, a lot easier to level on. It should create the ability to create a viable build that you're playing with. Even if you don't want to use guide, you can use the recommended builds, and as we've already mentioned before, you can put some points in. It should be more obvious where your points are going and what they're doing. So you get some intelligence, it's going to make you more powerful, and you're just going to have a good time. And you're not necessarily going to blast all the endgame content as well as other people because they're not optimal builds, but you're going to have a good time. You're going to be able to finish the story. You're going to be able to get to the endgame. I mean, before you get to the endgame, the first time, you probably shouldn't be expected to be a pro at this game. So it's just going to be much, much better for newer players, much, much better for the casual audience, and it should just be better all round for the Path of Exile experience. Another thing, and just one special mention, I'm not going to go into too much more on the passive tree, but one special mention here for the passive tree is they're giving us the ability to have double passive tree specs. It's the one thing they're doing, which is making it slightly more complex, but so much better for the gameplay, in my opinion. So what they're doing is you're going to have, like you did in Diablo 2, you had the ability to swap between set 1 of items, set 2 of items. So you're going to be able to do sort of the same thing, but with your skill tree in Path of Exile 2. You can have a lightning skill set tree, but then you can also have a cold magic set of skills set up, and you can switch between the two on the fly with, I'm assuming, a whole set of items and such, and you can basically go around and go, I'm going to debuff this enemy with these ice skills, but actually it makes them weak to all elements, and then I'm going to go in with my super duper lightning build that does loads of crit, and I'm just going to destroy this guy because he's got no resistances. That's just an example, but it's going to create even more possibilities of how you could play your builds. So that's very, very exciting for people like me who likes to make builds. It adds some extra depth without necessarily making it so you have to do that. You don't have to do that probably to have a good time, but you can if you want to. Another area of the game it looks like they're really focusing on, which was very, very complex in Path of Exile, and to be honest, it was one of the off-putting things, is just the crafting system in general. So crafting in Path of Exile, you had all these resources, they did all these things, and unless you knew what they all did and how to get them all and such, it became a bit of this convoluted mess. So for people like me and all those blasters that know Path of Exile inside out, they would have had a great time, they know exactly how to get all the resources, they know exactly which ones they want, which ones are valuable, and how to use them and all that. But new players will just be like, WTF, what do I do? I have no idea, and honestly, they just give up. So it looks like they're focusing more into crafting, giving you the resources much more frequently, so they're going to, and making them much more explainable what they do, and have a bit more focus on using them in general, giving you items that aren't fixed by gem slots, sockets and colors anymore, giving you items to reroll your stats, giving you items to add stats, I'm assuming, and all these other things you probably can do. I don't know the full list of the stuff right now, but it just seems like they're leaning into that more, which will create a much more of a journey from the beginning to end. You're going to be able to play the game, you're going to pick up an item and go, I really like this item, but I really wish I had this on it, and you're going to probably be able to adjust it in some way or another to get a bit closer to where you want. And then you might find another item and be like, cool, okay, well I can go craft this one as well, and so on. So you're going to be able to just generally improve your gear as you go in a way that's much more accessible to people, and that's really a key word here, accessibility. So it should just improve the journey overall for players. So moving on a little bit from the mechanics as such, I wanted to talk a little bit just about as a game dev, how impressed I am, generally speaking, at the way that Grinding Gears has gone about the development of this game. I'll try and keep this short and sweet. So Grinding Gears have been working on this game for years, and they told us about it about 5 years ago. So they have been putting an awful amount of effort and time into it, and they recently came out 3 weeks ago saying, 3 or 4 weeks ago, saying we're going to have to delay this game, guys, because of this reason. And do you know what? As a game dev, I can tell you now, I appreciate that, because it means that they go, do you know what? It's just not ready, guys, and we don't want to rush this. We want to make this as good as we can for you, but we also, as a server engineer, I can fully understand them not wanting their servers to get data that's completely wrong across the board for people, especially when it includes things such as purchases, which is what they were talking about being the main issue, converting all of your purchases from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2, so you've got them there as well. Special note to Grinding Gears here, shout out. That is an extremely generous gesture there. Not many studios, in my experience, have ever done such a thing where they've just allowed you to access to all the things you've bought in a previous title to get in the new title, so long as it's supported. That's not something you just expect. So, do you know what? Hats off to the studio for appreciating and looking after the people that have supported them over all the years. I really respect that a lot. What's clear is people at Grinding Gears are clearly enthusiasts of the genre. The way you can see when they're talking, it's on their face. They really know the game. They really understand it. They're probably playing the game as much or more than most people, so they truly understand the game and what the problems are and what they're trying to solve. And this is something that definitely shows in other games as maybe not being as much the case. And it's something that I think other studios and games could probably take a leaf out of their books. These games have got a lot of mechanics going on, and they require. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of things that can go right. So fully understanding what the problems are is the first step to being able to solve them, and that really feels like they're doing that here. It feels like it's being made by a passionate audience of gamers themselves for the gamers, and that's, as a gamer, I can appreciate that, and as a dev, I can appreciate it even more. I think them coming out the other day and saying, do you know what, guys, we've got this full story we want to give you, but we're going to give you 1, 2, and 3. Acts 1, 2, and 3. We're going to give you solid Acts 1, 2, and 3. We're going to allow you to have a new game plus version of those to fill where Acts 4, 5, and 6 would go. So you're going to play Acts 1 to 3 twice with increasing difficulty. But the reason we've done this, guys, is so that we can make the end game good. And I say that because that really is where most of these games struggle in the end. The campaigns are generally pretty good in these games. I think most people will agree, you know, Diablo's 4 campaign was okay, Last Epoch's campaign was okay and such. I liked them. I thought they were good. But really, when you get to the end game, if you're an enthusiastic player of these games, you want to keep blasting. It's repetitive gameplay. You want to keep playing. You want to try new builds. You just want to blast. And you skip through the campaign as fast as you can once you've done it once or twice. Most of these games do lack in that part, at least on release anyway. And they've basically turned around at Grinding Gears and said, we wanted to make this as good as we can for you guys, because this is what we know that you guys are going to play this game a lot are going to want. So we're going to do this. We're going to finish the story later down the line in the early access, and we're going to give you this. I think that's extremely smart, to be honest. And it makes me even more excited for the early access, because it feels like we're going to get a complete game loop. Even if we don't have the complete game story, we're going to have a complete game loop, which is not something... I mean, let's be honest. Diablo 4 did not release in that state. It took an amount of time to fix. If I go back in day, Diablo 3 did not release in that state either. I love the game. I've played it tens of thousands of hours, but it did not release in that state. It took them an amount of time to fix it. So I really hope that their approach here works for them, and it's as good as it seems, because it really is quite refreshing to hear that actually is something they've put the time and effort into. And just give us a more complete game loop in general. And to be honest, this moves on to... We're on the subject of Endgame. The Endgame just looks really fun. And as I've said before, fun is number one when it comes to games. It's why we all play games. Well, most of us, that's why we play games. We enjoy them. They're a way to get away from life. You get immersed in them. Different people like different things, but that's the main reason we play games. It looks like they're taking 5 of the most popular things they did in Path of Exile, so the league mechanics, let's say, but for you new players or new people to the audience, they're taking 5 of the most popular mechanics and they're implementing them into Path of Exile. So you've got the recognizability of what made Path of Exile popular in the end game, and they're sticking them on this whopping great, ginormous map, to the point that I saw some content creators that I'm inspired by, who are really big in the Path of Exile audience, go, wow! Like, I genuinely saw some people with the sheer amazement on their face of how ginormous this map looks. And apparently it's got infinite difficulty scaling. It's got nodes on it that you go through and you can craft to go through, and you can choose which ones you're doing. They have different, like, almost like objectives associated with them, but those are the league mechanics by the looks of it. Some of them have bosses associated with them, some of them do not. As you go through this map, you're going to beat bosses, you're going to beat these mechanics, and you're going to earn passive points. Those passive points have got their own trees. Now, that may seem like it's even added complexity for you more casual players, but these trees are specifically for, you've got a tree for your Atlas, this will improve your Atlas rewards. You've got a tree for your bosses in your Atlas. You are now going to put a node here, and you're going to get extra rewards from your bosses, or extra power against your bosses, or whatever it is in that tree. And for those that are really for extreme difficulty scaling, there's pinnacle bosses, which is the thing that the really truly top end gamers look for, the really tough content, the stuff they can show off when they've beaten. There are pinnacle bosses in there already. They're not showing them off to us before release. They said they want us to find them as we play the game and experience them for the first time, and they're apparently extremely challenging, and those also have their own passive tree, so when you do beat them, you can put a point in there, get more rewards, more difficult, more power, and so on. And the thing they're doing that's really smart here is the difficulty is not done by selecting a difficulty. So in Diablo, you go, I want to be in normal, I want to be in Torment 1, I want to be in Torment 4, so on. And that's like the easiest scaling all the way to the highest scaling for those who have not played Diablo 4. In this game, to increase your difficulty scaling, you are essentially going in and going, I've got these modifiers I can set. I can add a modifier that's going to make it harder for me, but with this returned reward. So you can pick and choose what you like to play. And that's actually quite smart, because you might have a build that really doesn't like certain types of gameplay because it's not built for it yet, or not built for it at all. So you can go, I'm just going to avoid those. But I don't mind this one because I'm actually quite strong against that. My build works really well against this. And that gives me the rewards, so I'm going to take that one. So that's going to be quite interesting. It's going to create a different play style and playthrough every time you play a different build. It's also just going to make it a bit more accessible to people because they can pick and choose what they like to play. Different people are going to enjoy playing in certain environments. They're going to enjoy playing different play styles and so on. So this is just all looking really, really interesting. Infinite replayability, and I cannot wait to get my hands on this. And on top of this, one thing that we don't get in all these games, but is truly asked for these days, is an in-game marketplace. So gold, which is your general currency used for character customization, such that will not be tradable. This is good. This will stop any of that naughty stuff that people do with acquiring currency and duplicating it, and all the bad things that create the economy to go completely crazy. But they are having an in-game marketplace which will allow you to sell and buy pretty much any of the currencies and anything else that you might need. So this is just going to create a game economy. Game economy is what drives people to keep playing, to chase the loot that's valuable, to sell it because I've got this thing, it's not that valuable to me right now, but if I sell that, I'm going to get this X amount of currency or this in return, which is valuable to me. And that's going to create an interesting dynamic for those that are interested in getting involved in a trading economy as well. All of this, all in all, is creating what is a pretty comprehensive package for a game that's coming out in early access. And if this is what we're getting in early access, and they say they've got basically going to double the size of the game by the time the game's come out, I mean, I'm excited to see where the game could go from there onwards, honestly. So, yeah, that all looks fantastic, guys. I mean, the end game is where it is at the end of the day, and that's why people will drop off and only play these games for a few weeks, because they complete the game, there's no end game, and they're just like, okay, what do I do now? There's nothing to strive for, nothing to do. The builds are kind of all done. This was the best build. There's nothing else to discover. This game has just got so much stuff. It's going to make it so difficult to do that as quickly as some other games. You're going to spend weeks and weeks figuring out how to make builds that are blasting the game, and then you can go make another one that's completely different that could do the same. But you'll have the journey associated with that to get to that point, which is part of the fun and the excitement and the thrill of playing these games. And that's what's driven some of us to play Diablo 2 for 20 plus years, because you can keep going back and you can play another character and another way of playing it, and you probably still enjoy the game if you know what you're doing. So it really leads into the next point here, which is build variety. I mean, build variety, the design philosophy of Path of Exile 2 and everything associated with it still has the build variety and all of the things that made Path of Exile so fluid, so diverse, but trying to make it in a way that's bringing it in line with modern action RPGs and more accessible to the casual audience, as we've spoken about earlier with the skill gems and such. So they're trying to solve some of those issues while still having noticeable character progression from beginning to end. You're going to be able to progress your character. The one thing you do in this game to get power is not necessarily to get specific damage increases here or defense increases there or extra HP regen. You're still going to get those. That's in your gear. That is in your passive tree. You're still going to get some of that stuff. But some of your big power is going to come from, I've got this skill. I'm going to go and hit with my monk. I'm going to go and punch this enemy in the face. But if I put this support gem on, I'm going to punch this enemy in the face, and then it's going to triple explode behind, all around them afterwards. It's going to give me enormous amounts of AoE. So now I've suddenly taken a single target skill and made it even better, and it's going to help me kill enemies that are all around me. And then on top of that, I can make it interact with frost walls, and it's going to do frozen damage to everyone around and freeze them. This is just random ideas off the top of my head. I don't know if that's actually in the game. But the whole concept's the same. There's going to be so many infinite possibilities of interactions. You're going to be able to play the way you want to play, have a unique game experience every time you play a new character and skill. And you can just play it the way you want to play. And that's how your character progresses and gets damage increases. It's noticeably different when you play the game. Most of the time when you change this, the way that your skills play, the way that the game actually interacts, and the way you kill stuff just gets better. It gets your skills are going to do bigger damage areas. They're going to interact with the terrain. They're going to do all these other things they didn't do when you started off like a weakling and you couldn't do anything to start with. So it just creates an interesting journey as well, which not all of the games do in this genre right now. So in summary, guys, Path of Exile 2 just looks truly astounding for a game that's meant to be coming out in early access. I know I'm extremely excited for this game, just as much as anyone else. And I've seen it on other content creators, like I say, I'm inspired by, and how excited they are for this. It looks like they're carving their way in the action RPG market as what could be a revolutionary title even though it's not doing that many things that couldn't be done before, it's just making a comprehensive package. And if this is where the starting point of the product is, it can only be excited to see where it goes next, especially for those that have played Path of Exile for the last 10 years. They'll know how much better the game is now for them than it was when it first came out. And if they put that much effort into this title, I have no doubt this game is going to be an absolute masterpiece. In comparison to its rivals, Diablo 4, it's definitely going to be more complex than Diablo 4. So any of you that play Diablo 4, because that's the more easy to get into, it's just simpler, more casual in general, you know, it's a much better time for you. You're probably still going to enjoy Diablo 4 over Path of Exile 2 if you don't like added complexity and having to play around with skills and such. But there is definitely a lot of layers here which will help you out. Recommended builds. There will be reduction in levels of complexity with currency. The passive tree will be more noticeably easier to navigate, even if you don't know all the nodes on it. Itemization is going to be easier. So generally, it is going to be more accessible. So don't write it off immediately if you're interested. Give it a go and see how it plays. In terms of Last Epoch is definitely more complex than Diablo 4. I'd say Path of Exile 2 to me is looking like the same level of complexity as Last Epoch right now. In the past, Path of Exile was by far the most complex, Diablo 4 was the most casual, and Last Epoch was in the middle. At the moment, Path of Exile 2 is leaning more towards roughly where Last Epoch is for me. It's got some complexities in it compared to Diablo 4, but it's definitely not going to be as complex as PoE 1. But hopefully retaining enough of the image of Path of Exile that it still feels like Path of Exile. So hopefully it will be the best of two worlds. It will attract the old audience that love the game, and it will bring in the newer audience who couldn't really get into the original one, but maybe this is just a bit better to what, more tailored to their taste, to allow them to at least give it a go and enjoy it. I mean, look, guys, this is a studio that relies on support from people to buy supporter packs and such. They are a free-to-play game. Beyond the, obviously for the early access, they are asking for $30 as an access, unless you've already spent previously a lot, $480 plus in the original game. Now that may seem absurd to people, but if you spent over 10 years, that's actually pretty good value for money if you've played the game enough. But they do not, when the game fully comes out, they do not ask for money for this game. It's free. They are a studio that has to pay all of these very talented people to make a game that we are loving. So I'm not paid to do this. I'm not sponsored. I'm just making this video because I really want to support this studio. I really want to support the game and the genre that I love and have loved for so long. I would implore you, if you're interested, to maybe go check out www.pathofexile.com. Go over, check out their supporter packs, and even if you just buy the $30 one, that will help them enormously. They go all the way out to $480, which is definitely a lot for most people, so I'm not recommending you should just go and blast $480 on the game. But at the end of the day, I would love this studio to take what looks like a fantastic game and keep working on it and keep improving it. And the only way that's going to be possible is if we support them. So please go over there and check them out if you're interested. Guys, I appreciate this is a long video. Thanks for sitting with me. If you've got any comments, any thoughts, please leave them in the description. I'm open to discussion. There's a lot of things I haven't covered in this video. And there's a lot of stuff I've still got to learn about the game. So if there's anything that you guys want to discuss, please let me know. I'm up for it. If you've not dropped a follow to the channel, guys, please consider doing so. I'm going to be covering as much Path of Exile 2 content going forward as possible. I also cover other ARPGs such as Diablo 4. Build guides is something I'm very much into, so if you're into that kind of thing and following builds, I am part of the Mobalytics partner team. There will be builds going up on there in due course from me and other amazing content creators that I work alongside. So go and check out the Mobalytics website if you can. The link will be in the description below. And also, I'm live on Twitch about 5 days a week, playing one manner of action RPG or another. At the moment, it's Diablo 4, but it will be Path of Exile 2 when that drops. So feel free to come and check me out when I'm live, guys. Come and discuss the game. I'd love to see you there. The title will also be in the description below. And with all that in mind, guys, thank you so much for being with me, and I will see you in the next video, guys.